After getting blackmailed, she's forced into arranged marriage with a paralyzed CEO. She showed him her gift. Now he won't let her go. Hello, my beloved, beautiful, lovely, and most cherished family. Welcome back to our sanctuary of stories. How have you been since our last journey together? I've been reading through your comments on our last video, and wow, your responses touched my heart deeply. So many of you connected with that story in ways I never expected. That's what makes this community so special, how we share these emotional journeys together. Before we begin today's story, I want to take a moment to bless each one of you, my beloved family. May peace find its way to your heart today. May strength fill your body when you feel weak. May wisdom guide your decisions in difficult moments. May love surround you like a gentle blanket, protecting you from life's harsh winds. May your homes be filled with laughter, your minds with clarity, and your spirit with hope. And may you always remember that no matter how dark the night gets, dawn always comes. You are cherished, you are valued, you are loved beyond measure. My beloved family, my brothers, sisters, sons and daughters, I've been feeling heavy in my heart lately. The weight of the world sometimes seems too much to bear, but each time I share a story with you, it lightens my heart in ways I cannot explain. In this moment, I need to know how many of you are with me, and this time I need you the most. Please comment, I'm with you, so I know how many of you are truly here beside me on this journey. If you're joining us for the first time today, you're not here by accident. You're exactly where you need to be. Quickly hit that subscribe button so you can join our special moments every day. It's more than just stories, it's healing, it's connection, it's family. Now that you've done that, take a deep breath, settle in, let your worries rest for a while, and let's begin with love, as we always do, as we always will. Rose Crandell stood at the bow of her research vessel, the Coral Guardian, her auburn hair whipping wildly in the wind as storm clouds gathered on the horizon. At 26, she had already distinguished herself as one of the most promising marine biologists on the East Coast. Her colleagues called her relentless, stubborn even, but Rose preferred the term dedicated. When you were fighting to save ecosystems that had thrived for thousands of years before human interference, dedication wasn't optional, it was essential. Dr. Crandell, the weather report just updated. Storms intensifying faster than predicted. The voice of her captain crackled over the radio. We should head back to shore. Rose checked her equipment readings and shook her head. We're too close, Captain. The Acropora palmata colony we've been tracking is just beyond that reef system. These endangered corals only spawn once a year, and this could be our only chance to collect the samples we need. With all due respect, Doctor, we're looking at gale force winds in the next hour. Rose looked at the dark clouds swirling above them, then back at her monitors where the blinking dot represented years of research. 1 hour is all I need. These coral species are dying at an unprecedented rate. If we don't document this spawning event, we lose critical genetic material that could help us restore entire reef systems. The captain sighed, knowing there was no changing her mind. 1 hour, not a minute more. Rose turned back to face the churning waters, determination setting her jaw tight. For 5 years, she had devoted her life to marine conservation, specializing in coral restoration. Her innovative techniques for cultivating endangered coral species had earned her grants from major environmental organizations and recognition in scientific journals. But recognition wasn't what drove Rose. It was the quiet certainty that if these coral reefs died, entire oceanic ecosystems would collapse in their wake. As predicted, the storm intensified with frightening speed. Rain lashed across the deck as Rose worked frantically to secure samples from the spawning corals. The vessel rocked violently, equipment sliding across counters as waves crashed against the hull. Dr. Crandell, we need to abort, now. The captain's voice held no room for argument this time. Just 5 more minutes, Rose called back, her fingers working deftly to preserve the delicate coral gametes she'd collected. The sky darkened to an impossible black. Lightning flashed, illuminating the wall of water bearing down on them. The navigation system beeped frantically as Rose finally rushed to the bridge, samples secured. The system's malfunctioning. The captain shouted over the howling wind. Manual steering only. Rose grabbed onto a railing as the boat lurched. Through the sheets of rain she suddenly spotted a light where none should be. Another vessel, much larger than theirs, directly in their path. "Hard starboard," she screamed, but it was too late. The sickening crunch of fiberglass and metal filled the air as their research vessel slammed into the side of what Rose now recognized as a luxury yacht. The impact threw her against the control panel, pain exploding in her shoulder. Alarms blared, voices shouted, and through the fractured windshield, Rose caught a glimpse of someone on the yacht's deck being thrown overboard by the force of the collision. Hours later, soaked and shivering in a hospital waiting room, Rose learned the full extent of what had happened. The yacht belonged to Elias Montgomery, the 34-year-old CEO of Ocean Tech Solutions, one of the largest marine technology companies in the country. He had been on a solo sailing trip when the storm hit, a chance to clear his head before his upcoming wedding, the nurse had mentioned. And now, because of Rose's insistence on staying out in that storm, Elias Montgomery lay in surgery with a severe spinal injury. "The doctors are doing everything they can," the hospital administrator assured her, though his eyes held little comfort. "But you should be prepared for the possibility of legal consequences. Mr. Montgomery is a very influential man." Rose sank into a chair, her hands trembling. The coral sample specimens that could have helped save entire reef systems now sat forgotten in a cooler by her feet. What did they matter now when a man might never walk again because of her? A commotion at the end of the hall drew Rose's attention. A tall, elegantly dressed woman, with perfectly styled black hair, was arguing with a doctor outside what must have been Elias's room. Despite the late hour, she wore a tailored suit and heels that clicked sharply against the linoleum as she gestured angrily. Rose moved closer, drawn by some masochistic need to understand the full scope of her mistake. "What do you mean, uncertain?" The woman's voice carried down the corridor. "How uncertain? Weeks? Months?" The doctor spoke too quietly for Rose to hear, but the woman's response was crystal clear. "Permanently, as in he might never walk again." The horror in her voice gave way to something colder, more calculated. She glanced around, then lowered her voice, though not enough. "I can't deal with this right now. The campaign launches next month." The doctor said something else, and the woman, who Rose now realized must be Elias's fiancée, straightened her spine and shook her head. "I need to see him. I need to tell him myself." Rose should have walked away. Instead, frozen by guilt and morbid curiosity, she remained just close enough to hear what happened next when the door to Elias's room opened. "Antelia." A man's voice, weak but with an undercurrent of steel. "You didn't have to come. Elias, we need to talk." The woman, Natalia, sounded like she was delivering a prepared speech. "I've been thinking about our relationship, about our future." Now, the man's voice held disbelief. "I just got out of surgery. I'm in politics, Elias," Natalia said coldly. "I can't be tied to someone who might never walk again. My career needs a partner who can stand beside me, literally." The silence that followed was deafening. Rose felt sick, not just because of her role in causing this man's injury, but because of the cruel calculation in Natalia's voice. "Get out." Elias's voice was quiet but glacial. "You'll understand eventually that this is better for both. Get out." As Natalia stormed from the room, Rose ducked into an alcove, heart hammering in her chest. The weight of what she'd done crashed down on her fully. In a single night, her pursuit of scientific discovery had not only potentially ended a man's ability to walk, but had also cost him his relationship. What she didn't know yet was that it had also set in motion a chain of events that would change both their lives forever. Back in her apartment that night, Rose's hands shook as she dialed the only person she could think to call. The phone rang 3 times before a sleepy voice answered. "Laura, it's me. Something terrible has happened." Laura Wilson had been Rose's closest friend and colleague since graduate school. They'd spent countless nights poring over research papers, celebrating breakthroughs, and consoling each other through failures. If anyone would understand the impossible position Rose now found herself in, it would be Laura. "Rose, it's 2 in the morning. What's wrong?" Laura's voice shifted from groggy to concerned. The words tumbled out between sobs as Rose recounted the night's events: the storm, the coral samples, the collision, and Elias Montgomery's injury. "Laura, I've ruined everything, she choked out. There was an equipment malfunction during the storm. The navigation system just failed at the worst moment. Oh my God, Rose, that's terrible. Laura's voice was soothing, sympathetic. But you know these things happen in research. I'm here for you, whatever you need. They're talking about criminal charges, Laura. Reckless endangerment, at minimum. My career, all our work on coral restoration, it could all be over. Breathe, Rose. Just breathe. We'll figure this out together, I promise. What Rose couldn't see, as Laura offered these comforting words, was the cold calculation behind them. For 5 years Laura had worked in Rose's shadow, watching her colleagues' meteoric rise in marine biology while her own contributions went unnoticed. Every grant, every publication, every speaking engagement seemed to go to Rose, while Laura remained the assistant, despite having the same credentials and working just as hard. As Laura hung up the phone, the concerned expression melted from her face, replaced by something much darker. She walked to her desk and opened her laptop, pulling up an article about the accident that was already circulating in local news. Elias Montgomery, CEO, injured in boating collision. The corners of her mouth turned upward as she read. Poor Rose, she murmured to the empty room, satisfaction lacing her words. Always so careful, so precise. Who would have thought a simple navigation system malfunction could bring down the brilliant Dr. Crandell? Over the next week, Rose's world collapsed around her. The university placed her on administrative leave pending investigation. The environmental foundation that funded her research issued a formal statement reviewing their relationship with her project. Reporters gathered outside her apartment building, shouting questions about her recklessness and disregard for safety protocols. Through it all, Laura remained her steadfast supporter, at least to her face. Don't worry, she assured Rose over coffee. The department chair asked me to temporarily take over your classes and lab supervision. I'll keep everything running exactly as you would want. What she didn't mention was how she'd hinted to colleagues that Rose had been working too hard lately, becoming dangerously obsessive about her research, or how she'd volunteered to review Rose's grant applications and research notes in light of recent events. As criminal charges loomed closer, Rose grew increasingly desperate. Her attorney didn't sugarcoat the situation. The prosecution has a strong case. Dr. Crandell, witness statements confirm you insisted on staying out despite severe weather warnings. The equipment malfunction defense is weak without concrete evidence of tampering or previous issues. But my work, Rose whispered, years of research. I understand your research is important, but we're potentially looking at criminal negligence charges here. If convicted, not only would your career be over, but you could face jail time. The weight of guilt and consequences pressed down on Rose like the crushing depths of the ocean she'd dedicated her life to studying. Each night she dreamed of the moment of impact, of Elias Montgomery's life changing forever, because of her choices. Each morning she woke to the reality that her life's purpose, saving the coral reefs, might now be beyond her reach forever. What she didn't realize was that the true betrayal wasn't the malfunctioning equipment, or the storm's fury. It was sitting across from her at their weekly coffee meetings, offering sympathy with one hand while quietly dismantling her life's work with the other. 2 weeks after the accident, Rose received an unexpected call from Elias Montgomery's assistant. Mr. Montgomery wishes to meet with you tomorrow at his office. 10 a.m. sharp. Rose's stomach tightened with dread. This could only mean one thing. He was ready to proceed with legal action against her. Still, she had no choice but to face the consequences of her actions. The Ocean Tech Solutions headquarters rose like a gleaming blue monolith against the Boston skyline. Inside, Rose was led through a series of hallways to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. The irony wasn't lost on her to be surrounded by views of the ocean she loved, in what might be her final professional act as a marine biologist. Elias Montgomery sat behind a massive desk, his wheelchair positioned to face the door. At 34, he cut an imposing figure despite his condition, broad-shouldered with sharp features and piercing blue eyes that assessed Rose coldly as she entered. "Miss Crandell," he greeted her, not offering to shake hands. "Please, sit." Rose took the chair opposite him, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Mr. Montgomery, I want to express my deepest regret for what happened. If there's anything I can save it, he interrupted. I didn't bring you here for apologies. He wheeled himself around the desk, coming to rest directly in front of her. Up close she could see the strain in his face, the effort it took for him to maintain his composed exterior. I have a proposition that might benefit us both, he said, surprising her. What kind of proposition? Rose asked warily. Elias leaned forward, his gaze never leaving hers. Marry me, until I recover. Rose blinked, certain she'd misheard him. What? It's quite simple, really. His tone was businesslike, as if discussing a corporate merger rather than marriage. Your research continues under my company's protection, and I don't face this recovery alone. Rose stared at him, trying to process his words. Why would you want to marry someone who's responsible for your injury? A humorless smile crossed his face. My engagement to Natalia was never about love. It was an arranged marriage, designed to demonstrate stability to my board executives and concerned investors. A CEO with a stable home life inspires confidence. His eyes hardened. You ruined that arrangement, so now you get to fulfill that role. This is absurd, Rose whispered. Is it? Consider the alternative. His voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. With the charges against you, your career in marine conservation would effectively be over. All that groundbreaking coral research gone. The weight of his words settled over her. He was right. Without her research, thousands of coral species might be lost forever. What exactly would this arrangement entail? She asked, her scientific mind automatically seeking parameters. You move into my estate's separate quarters, of course. You'll accompany me to public appearances and board meetings as needed, proving to everyone that I remain stable and fit to handle my CEO duties despite this setback. In exchange, Ocean Tech funds your research fully, and all charges against you disappear. Rose stood and walked to the window, looking out at the harbor. I need time to think. You have until tomorrow morning. Elias replied, unmoved. My lawyers are prepared to file their case by noon. 24 hours later, Rose sat across from Laura at their usual cafe, her untouched coffee growing cold as she explained Elias's proposition. You're marrying him? Just like that? Laura's voice was strangely tight, her fingers gripping her mug too hard. I don't have much choice, Rose explained, misreading her friend's tension as concern. It's this or lose everything I've worked for. Well, that's unexpected, Laura replied, her smile not reaching her eyes. Just be careful. Men like him always have ulterior motives. What Rose couldn't see was the rage contorting Laura's features as her carefully built plan to ruin Rose's career crumbled before her eyes. The accident was supposed to destroy Rose, not lead her to the most powerful marine tech CEO on the East Coast. I'll be fine, Rose assured her, mistaking the fury in Laura's eyes for worry. It's just business, after all. A contract, nothing more. But even as she said the words, Rose wondered what exactly she was agreeing to, and why, despite everything, she felt an inexplicable pull toward the man whose life she had upended. My dear family, I need to pause our story for a moment and connect with you. What would you do if you were in Rose's position right now? Would you accept this cold arrangement with Elias to preserve your life's work and the research that could save dying ecosystems? Or would you face the legal consequences of that stormy night regardless of what it might cost? Your perspective truly matters to me. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Would you have made the same choice as Rose? Now, let's continue with this extraordinary journey together. The wedding took place 1 week later at a small coastal property owned by Ocean Tech Solutions. No flowers, no music, no celebrations, just a judge, 2 lawyers and the necessary paperwork. Rose wore a simple blue dress rather than white, a silent acknowledgement of the arrangement's true nature. The ceremony lasted less than 15 minutes, with neither bride nor groom smiling as they exchanged the rings Elias's assistant had purchased. Laura stood beside Rose as her witness, squeezing her hand in apparent support while her mind calculated how to turn this unexpected development to her advantage. You beautiful, she whispered to Rose, her smile tight. Are you okay? Rose nodded, though okay was far from what she felt. The gold band on her finger felt foreign, heavy with implications she was still struggling to process. Elias's cliffside estate sat 30 minutes outside Boston, a modernist structure of glass and steel perched dramatically over the Atlantic. Floor-to-ceiling windows in nearly every room offered breathtaking ocean views that would have thrilled Rose under different circumstances. "Your belongings have been moved to the guest house," Elias informed her, as his driver helped him from the car. His tone was businesslike, devoid of any emotion that might suggest they'd just exchanged vows. "It has a direct path to the lab. Consider it your domain." Rose followed him through the main house to the back terrace, where she could see a smaller but equally modern structure nestled among the coastal pines. "And where will you be?" "The master suite is on the main floor now," he replied. "I've had renovations done to accommodate my condition." The slight pause betrayed the first crack in his composed exterior, a glimpse of the frustration he carried. "Our arrangement doesn't require us to pretend affection, Mrs. Montgomery. You have your space, I have mine." The surname startled her. Of course she'd taken his name. It was part of presenting a united front to his board and investors, but hearing it aloud made everything suddenly, uncomfortably real. True to his word, Elias maintained his distance in the days that followed. Rose quickly established a routine, spending mornings in the state-of-the-art research laboratory he had built on the property. The facilities surpassed anything she'd had access to at the university: cutting-edge microscopes, controlled environment chambers for coral cultivation, advanced water quality monitoring systems, and a dedicated staff awaiting her direction. "Your research team has been vetted and hired," Elias informed her during a rare shared breakfast on the terrace. "I expect weekly reports on your progress." "You didn't have to do all this," Rose said, genuinely surprised by the extent of the resources now at her disposal. His expression hardened. "I didn't do it for you. Ocean Tech has been developing marine conservation technologies for years. Your research aligns with our interests." Despite his cold demeanor, Rose found herself increasingly fascinated by Elias's work. Ocean Tech Solutions wasn't merely a marine technology company as she'd initially believed. It was pioneering advanced systems for ocean cleanup, sustainable aquaculture, and yes, coral reef restoration. The technical journals in his library revealed projects far beyond what she'd imagined, many addressing problems she'd encountered in her own research. Occasionally Elias would observe her work from the doorway of the lab, his presence announced only by the soft whir of his wheelchair. One afternoon, after watching her struggle with a particularly delicate coral grafting technique, he offered his first direct criticism. "Perhaps if you applied more precision to your research, you wouldn't crash boats into people," he remarked coldly. Rose kept her eyes on her work, refusing to let him see how deeply the barb had cut. "If you'd checked the weather report before sailing, neither of us would be in this situation." A tense silence followed, broken only when Elias wheeled himself away without another word. That night, Rose sat alone on the deck of her guest house watching moonlight dance across the waves. She had everything she needed to continue her life's work: advanced facilities, funding, protection from legal consequences. Yet as she twisted the unfamiliar wedding band on her finger, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd made a deal with a man whose bitterness might prove as dangerous as the storm that had brought them together. What she didn't yet understand was how quickly boundaries could blur when two brilliant minds began to recognize themselves in each other. 3 weeks into their arrangement, Rose discovered something unexpected in Elias's schedule: daily physical therapy sessions he hadn't mentioned. She found out only because his regular therapist called in sick, and his assistant frantically sought a replacement. "I have a background in cardiology," Rose offered, remembering her undergraduate minor. "I could help today." The assistant looked relieved but wary. "Mr. Montgomery doesn't like changes to his routine." "Mr. Montgomery doesn't have much choice today," Rose replied firmly. When she entered the home gym equipped for rehabilitation, Elias was already there, gripping the parallel bars with white-knuckled determination. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, sweat beading on his forehead from exertion. "Your therapist called in sick. I'm filling in." "I don't need your help," he snapped, trying to adjust his position without assistance. Rose crossed her arms, unintimidated. "According to your doctors, you do." Their notes are quite specific about not skipping sessions. Their eyes locked in silent battle. Finally, Elias relented with a curt nod. Fine, the routine is in that binder. What followed was an hour of tense, painful work. Rose guided him through exercises designed to stimulate nerve pathways and strengthen muscles that hadn't fully atrophied. Though Elias remained stoic, she could see the cost of each movement in the tightening around his eyes, the controlled rhythm of his breathing. "That's enough for today," she said finally, noticing his exhaustion. "No," the word came out between gritted teeth. "2 more sets. You're pushing too hard. Recovery isn't just about force of will." "What would you know about it?" he challenged, anger flashing in his eyes. "More than you might think." Rose knelt beside his wheelchair. "When I was a doctoral student, I spent 6 months rehabilitating a pod of dolphins after a toxic algae bloom. Their neurological damage was severe, but we discovered that gradual, consistent therapy worked better than intensive sessions that exhausted them. The body needs rest to integrate progress." Elias studied her face, searching for pity but finding only professional assessment. "1 more set," he compromised. During their final exercise, as Rose helped him attempt to flexion, something miraculous happened. A slight, almost imperceptible movement of his right big toe. Both froze, staring. "Did you see that?" Rose whispered, hardly daring to breathe. Elias tried again, concentration etched in every line of his face. The toe moved again, a tiny twitch but undeniably voluntary. For a brief moment, the mask of resentment fell away, revealing naked hope in Elias's eyes. Just as quickly, he composed himself, but the emotion had been real. As Rose helped him back into his wheelchair, an uncomfortable silence hung between them, the shared witness of vulnerability neither had expected to reveal. "Thank you," he said finally, so quietly she almost missed it, "for not giving up today." The words felt monumental coming from him, an acknowledgement that perhaps they weren't merely captor and captive in this strange arrangement. That weekend, during her standing coffee date with Laura, Rose found herself sharing the breakthrough. "He actually moved his toe," she explained, stirring her latte absently. "The doctors weren't even sure he'd regain that much function." Laura's smile didn't reach her eyes. "And now you're his physical therapist too. What's next, feeding him by hand?" "It's not like that," Rose protested. "I'm just helping while his regular therapist is out." "Of course." Laura reached across the table to pat Rose's hand condescendingly. "Just remember the circumstances, Rose. Don't fool yourself into thinking this is real. He needed a wife for appearances, and you needed to avoid a lawsuit, nothing more." The words stung with their calculated precision. "I know that." "Do you?" Laura tilted her head, studying Rose with false concern. "Because sometimes I catch you talking about him almost fondly." Rose pulled her hand away. "That's ridiculous." "Is it? We both know how you get, Rose, always trying to fix things, to heal them." Laura's voice softened to something that might sound like gossip to an untrained ear. "I just don't want to see you hurt when he recovers and doesn't need you anymore." The casual cruelty of the statement landed exactly as Laura had intended. As Rose drove back to the estate, her mind replayed Laura's words, planting seeds of doubt that threatened the fragile connection beginning to form with the man she had once injured, and was now against all odds helping to heal. 2 months into their arrangement, the annual Northeast Marine Conservation Conference arrived, Rose's first public appearance in the scientific community since the accident. Though her research had continued under Ocean Tech's protection, rumors and whispers had spread throughout academic circles about her convenient marriage to the CEO whose yacht she had crashed into. As Elias's wife, Rose had a prominent spot on the conference schedule to present her latest findings on accelerated coral regeneration in changing ocean temperatures. The ballroom was packed, with many attendees there more for gossip than science. "You don't have to come," Rose told Elias that morning as they prepared to leave. "I know these events are tedious even without the wheelchair logistics. I'm the CEO of a marine technology company, and your husband," he replied matter-of-factly. "My absence would raise more questions than my presence." The presentation itself went smoothly until the question period began. Dr. Raymond Walsh, a notoriously traditional researcher from Woods Hole, stood with a skeptical expression. "Dr. Crandell, or should I say Mrs. Montgomery," He began emphasizing her married name with thinly veiled contempt. Your claims about accelerated symbiotic adaptation seem conveniently timed given your new access to ocean tech resources. Where was this breakthrough methodology during your university work? Rose maintained her composure. The methodology evolved as the research progressed, Dr. Walsh. Ocean Tech's facilities certainly accelerated our timeline, but the fundamental approach was developed during my doctoral work, as referenced in slide 14. Another researcher stood. Your sample sizes are impressive, but your control parameters seem questionable at best. How can we trust results produced under such unusual circumstances? The implication was clear: her marriage had compromised her scientific integrity. Rose felt heat rising in her cheeks as more critical questions followed, each less about science and more about her credibility. From the corner of her eye she saw Elias shift in his wheelchair, his jaw tightening with each thinly veiled insult. Then, to her astonishment, he raised his hand, commanding immediate attention from the moderator. Elias Montgomery, CEO of Ocean Tech Solutions. He introduced himself unnecessarily as an assistant, wheeled him to the microphone. The room fell silent. Many had speculated about his condition, but few had seen him in person since the accident. I find it fascinating, he began, his voice steady and authoritative, how quickly brilliant minds can be clouded by gossip and presumption. His eyes swept the room. Dr. Crandell's approach to coral regeneration is revolutionary. Her understanding of symbiotic relationships in ecosystems reflects a brilliance that traditional researchers rakes. Rose stared at him, speechless, as he continued. Ocean Tech devoted resources to her work because it represents the future of marine conservation, not because of our personal connection. Those questioning her methodology might better use their time examining why their own research hasn't progressed beyond techniques established 20 years ago. The room erupted in murmurs as Elias handed back the microphone and nodded to Rose before being wheeled back to his position. The remaining questions were notably more focused on the actual science, the critics effectively silenced by Elias's unexpected intervention. Later in the car ride home, Rose finally found her voice. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. His eyes remained on the passing coastline. Their attacks were unprofessional and factually incorrect. But how did you know the details of my methodology well enough to defend it? A slight smile crossed his face. Your work deserves recognition. I've been studying your research for weeks. Your approach to coral DNA preservation is more innovative than you give yourself credit for. The admission stunned her. While she'd been navigating their complex personal dynamic, he had been privately studying her life's work with enough depth to defend it publicly. Thank you, she said softly. It means a lot, especially coming from you. Something shifted between them in that moment, a bridge forming across the chasm of resentment and obligation that had defined their relationship until now. From across the conference hall, Laura had watched the entire exchange, her face darkening as she observed the unmistakable connection forming between Rose and Elias. This wasn't part of her plan. Rose was supposed to be miserable in this arrangement, not finding an ally. As she watched Elias defend Rose with genuine respect and admiration, Laura realized with growing alarm that her careful scheme was veering dangerously off course. The woman she'd intended to destroy might instead be finding something real in the very situation designed to break her. Following the conference, a subtle but significant shift occurred between Rose and Elias. Their morning meetings, once brief and strictly professional, gradually extended as Elias began offering insights into her research from a technological perspective. Have you considered applying acoustic monitoring to track predator patterns around the reef installations? He suggested one morning, reviewing her latest data. Ocean Tech developed underwater sound recognition systems for military applications, but we could adapt them for conservation. Rose looked up from her coffee, intrigued. That could solve our nocturnal monitoring challenges. The coral predators are most active after dark when visual data collection is limited. What began as occasional suggestions evolved into true collaboration. Elias started joining Rose in the lab, his engineering expertise complementing her biological knowledge in ways neither had anticipated. His company's advanced technology paired with her deep understanding of marine ecosystems created a synergy that produced results faster than either could have achieved alone. Your polymer coating completely changed our transplantation success rate, Rose admitted one evening, reviewing their monthly data. We're seeing a 78% survival rate compared to the usual 42%. Elias nodded, studying the graphs on her tablet. And your insights on timing the deployments with natural spawning cycles maximized our coverage area. The board is impressed. They've approved additional funding for 10 more reef sites. As their professional collaboration deepened, the personal boundaries between them began to blur. The guest house remained Rose's private domain, but she found herself spending more evenings in the main house, working alongside Elias until the early hours, their conversations flowing beyond research into philosophy, books and shared memories of the ocean. One night, working late in the lab, they hunched together over a powerful microscope, examining a particularly promising coral sample that showed accelerated calcium deposition. The table had been reduced to fit his adaptation. "Look at the structure forming here," Rose said excitedly. "This colony is adapting to the higher acidity levels much faster than we projected." Elias leaned closer, his shoulder brushing against hers. "Show me exactly where." Without thinking, Rose reached for his hand, guiding it to the fine focus knob of the microscope. "Here, adjust it just slightly. See how the polyps are creating a different skeletal pattern." Their hands remained together longer than necessary, the warmth of the contact sending an unexpected current through them both. Neither pulled away. "It's beautiful," he murmured, but his eyes had shifted from the microscope to her face, illuminated in the blue light of the lab. Rose felt a flush rise to her cheeks. "Science isn't just about measurement and control," she said softly, her hand still resting lightly on his. "Sometimes it's about patience, about creating the conditions for healing and then stepping back, letting nature find its way." The double meaning hung in the air between them, acknowledged but unspoken. "Like physical therapy," Elias replied, his voice lower than usual. "Forcing progress doesn't work." "Exactly," Rose nodded, finally withdrawing her hand reluctantly. "The body, or the coral, needs to adapt at its own pace. We just provide the optimal environment." As she turned back to the microscope, the parallel became unmistakable to them both. The coral colonies were healing and adapting to changed conditions, just as Elias was gradually recovering from his injury, just as something new and unexpected was growing between two people thrown together by disaster. What had begun as a cold arrangement of convenience had transformed into something neither had anticipated, a partnership of minds that increasingly threatened to become something more. With each breakthrough in the lab, each shared success, the wall of resentment between them crumbled further, revealing two people who understood each other in ways no one else could. Neither noticed the time midnight had come and gone, but in the blue glow of the lab, surrounded by new life forming in their carefully tended coral tanks, time seemed to stand still in this bubble they had created together. But as Rose and Elias's professional partnership flourished, Laura watched from the periphery with mounting alarm. Her weekly coffee meetings with Rose had become less frequent, often cancelled due to breakthrough developments at the lab. When they did meet, Rose spoke enthusiastically about their research, her eyes lighting up whenever she mentioned Elias's contributions. "We've developed a new coral grafting technique that could revolutionize reef restoration," Rose explained during one of their increasingly rare gatherings. "Elias suggested combining our biological approach with a nano-adhesive his company developed for underwater construction. The results are incredible." Laura's smile tightened. "How wonderful that you're enjoying playing house with the man whose life you ruined." Rose flinched at the barb. "It's not like that. This is professional collaboration." "Of course," Laura replied, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "And I'm sure his miraculous recovery has nothing to do with keeping you around longer." The comment lodged in Rose's mind like a splinter, festering with doubt long after their coffee ended. Laura's desperation reached a breaking point during the quarterly review meeting at Ocean Tech, where she had been invited as a partner researcher. As Rose presented their latest findings to the board, Laura interrupted. I should note that the pH-responsive transplantation protocol was actually developed during our joint university research, she stated smoothly. I'm glad to see it's proving effective on a larger scale. The room fell silent. Rose stared at her friend in confusion. The protocol had been developed entirely at Ocean Tech, months after the university research ended. Before Rose could respond, Elias spoke from the head of the table. That's actually Dr. Crandell's innovation, he stated firmly. I remember because she explained the concept to me just last week when we were finalizing the patent application. The initial results came from our Caribbean test site, not the university program. Laura's face flushed with humiliation as the board members exchanged glances. I must have misremembered, she muttered, shrinking back in her chair. After the meeting, Rose confronted her friend. What was that about? You know that protocol was developed here. A simple mistake, Laura replied, avoiding her eyes. We've worked on so many projects together they blur together. The exchange left Rose unsettled, but a more disturbing revelation awaited her. That afternoon she received a message from Tom Whitaker, the aging technician who had worked on her research vessel for over 2 decades. His request for a private meeting was unusual enough, but it was the tremble in his weathered hands as he entered her office that truly alarmed her. There's something you need to know, Dr. Crandell, he said, placing a worn folder on her desk. About the accident, it wasn't your fault. Rose stared at him, uncomprehending. What do you mean? The navigation system failed during the storm. Yes, it failed. Tom couldn't meet her eyes, but not by accident. With shaking fingers, he opened the folder to reveal maintenance logs, text messages and photos. She paid me to look the other way. Said it was just to teach you a lesson. I never thought anyone would get hurt. Rose felt the blood drain from her face as she examined the evidence. Photos showed Laura tampering with equipment the night before the accident. Maintenance logs had been altered to hide unauthorized access to the navigation systems. Most damning were the text messages between Laura and Tom. System configured as requested. Compass will drift randomly in rough weather. Perfect. After tomorrow, her precious reputation will be destroyed. The golden girl will finally fall. You sure this is just to scare her? Nobody gets hurt, right? Just enough to knock her down a peg. Trust me, it's for her own good. Tom's voice broke as he continued. When I heard someone got badly injured, I wanted to come forward, but I was afraid of losing my job, of criminal charges. I've been living with this guilt for months now. I can't anymore. Not after seeing how you've blamed yourself all this time. Rose stared at the evidence, nausea rising in her throat. The navigation failure hadn't been a tragic accident or her own recklessness. It had been deliberately planned by the woman she'd considered her closest friend for years. Why, she whispered, though the evidence before her told the story clearly enough. Jealousy, resentment, a calculated attempt to destroy her career and reputation. She always talked about how you got all the recognition, all the grants, Tom said quietly. How you were the star while she did just as much work. It ate at her for years. Rose sat motionless, trying to process this shattering betrayal. Every conversation with Laura now replayed in her mind with terrible new context. The supportive words after the accident, the subtle undermining of her relationship with Elias, the constant reminders of guilt, all part of a calculated campaign by someone who had smiled to her face while orchestrating her downfall. The truth was almost too painful to bear. The person she had trusted most hadn't just failed to support her. They had actively, deliberately caused the catastrophe that had changed her life forever. The university research lab was empty when Rose arrived the next morning, except for Laura, who was examining coral samples through a microscope. For a moment Rose stood in the doorway watching this woman she had considered a sister for nearly a decade, someone she had trusted with her dreams, her fears, her vulnerabilities. The weight of the folder in her bag felt like a stone. I need to talk to you, Rose said quietly, closing the door behind her. Laura looked up with a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. Rose, I didn't expect you here today. How's life with your CEO husband? The casual cruelty in her tone, present all along but only now recognizable, made Rose's decision easier. She placed Tom's folder on the lab table and opened it to the most damning photographs. You caused the accident, Rose stated. her voice eerily calm. "You tampered with the navigation system. You wanted to destroy my career." Her voice caught slightly. "You wanted Elias to be hurt." Laura's eyes darted to the photos, then back to Rose's face. For a moment, she seemed ready to deny everything. Then her mask finally slipped, revealing the cold calculation beneath. "You had everything handed to you," she spat, abandoning any pretense. "The grants, the recognition, while I worked just as hard in your shadow. Always brilliant Dr. Crandell and her assistant." She laughed bitterly. "You needed to be taken down a notch." "We were a team," Rose whispered, disbelief coloring her words. "I always credited you in my research. I nominated you for the Oceanographic Innovation Award last year." "Crumbs from your table." Laura's voice hardened. "Do you have any idea what it's like to watch someone coast through life on charm and luck while you struggle for every scrap of recognition?" "Coast through life?" Rose's shock gave way to anger. "I worked 18-hour days for years. I sacrificed relationships, health, everything for this research. And now you've got it all, don't you? Fame, fortune, and a billionaire husband." Laura gestured dismissively. "Even your great downfall turned into another victory for perfect Rose." "I trusted you," Rose said, her voice breaking. "I told you everything." Laura's smile was cruel, "and I listened to every pathetic word. Your insecurities, your growing feelings for your CEO. It was sickening to watch you fall in love with the man I tried to destroy." The words landed like physical blows. "People could have died, Laura. The research team, Elias. Nobody was supposed to get hurt." Laura snapped, a flicker of genuine distress crossing her face before hardening again. "The navigation system was just supposed to malfunction enough to embarrass you. The storm, the yacht, that wasn't part of the plan. But it happened," Rose said flatly. "A man nearly lost the ability to walk forever because of your jealousy." A tense silence filled the lab. Rose gathered the evidence back into the folder with steady hands. "I could sue you," she said finally. "I could have you arrested for what you did." For the first time, fear flashed across Laura's face as the reality of her actions sank in. "Rose, I never meant—" "Don't," Rose interrupted. "Don't pretend you care now. I won't pursue charges, not because you deserve forgiveness, but because I refuse to let your bitterness taint my life any further. You no longer exist to me, Laura. I'll ensure you never work in this field again, but that's where my energy toward you ends." Without waiting for a response, Rose turned and walked out of the lab, leaving behind not just Laura but the weight of a friendship that had never been what she believed. That evening, she found Elias in his study, reviewing research papers. He looked up when she entered, immediately noting her red-rimmed eyes. "What happened?" he asked, wheeling toward her. The whole story poured out, Tom's confession, the evidence, Laura's admission, years of friendship revealed as manipulation and resentment. As Rose spoke, Elias's expression darkened, but he remained silent until she finished. "She was my best friend," Rose whispered, as tears finally overtook her. "I shared everything with her." Elias moved closer, taking her hands in his. For the first time he pulled her toward him, creating a space for her to collapse against his chest as the emotions she'd held in check held day finally broke free. His arms encircled her, strong and steady. "Not everything," he reminded her gently, lifting her tear-stained face. "What we have, what we've built, she couldn't touch that. In a strange way, we have her to thank for bringing us together." "That doesn't make her actions right," Rose protested through her tears. "No," Elias agreed, his thumb gently wiping a tear from her cheek. "But it reminds us that sometimes beauty grows from the darkest places, like your corals after a storm." The parallel wasn't lost on Rose, how destruction could lead to new growth, how damage could create space for something unexpected to flourish. In Elias's arms, with truth finally unveiled, she felt something shift and settle between them, a foundation of honesty where before there had been only arrangement and obligation. The seasons changed, winter yielding to spring, then summer, marking nearly 10 months since the accident that had brought Rose and Elias together. Their days fell into a rhythm. Mornings in the lab, Afternoons in meetings or with Elias's physical therapists, evenings sharing meals and conversations that stretched long into the night. Their coral restoration project had expanded to 12 sites along the eastern seaboard, with international conservation organizations requesting their protocols. Rose's research team had doubled, and Ocean Tech's Marine Conservation Division had become the company's fastest-growing department. Yet even as their professional success flourished, a quiet anxiety grew in Rose's heart. Elias's recovery had progressed remarkably in recent months. The slight movement in his toes had expanded to increasing control over his feet, then partial sensation returning to his legs. His doctors spoke optimistically about his prognosis, each small victory bringing them closer to the unspoken end of their arrangement. What had begun as a business transaction had evolved into something neither had anticipated. The thought of returning to her old life, of leaving the clifftop home and the man who had become the center of her world, felt increasingly impossible to bear. What Rose didn't know was that Elias had been keeping a secret for nearly 3 weeks during private therapy sessions scheduled while she worked in the lab. He had taken his first tentative steps. Each day he practiced while she was away, determined to master walking again before revealing his progress. His motivation wasn't pride, but fear that once he could walk, Rose would consider their contract fulfilled and walk away herself. One evening in late summer, they sat together on the cliffside terrace, watching the sunset paint the Atlantic in shades of gold and crimson. A comfortable silence had settled between them, broken only by the distant rhythm of waves against the rocks below. "The Caribbean deployment is scheduled for next month," Rose said finally. "The thermal mapping shows it's our best chance to catch the coral spawning." Elias nodded, his eyes on the horizon. The board approved the expanded budget. "Your team can stay as long as needed to collect samples." Another silence fell, heavier this time with words unspoken. "Elias," Rose began hesitantly, "your latest medical report mentioned significant motor function improvement." He tensed slightly but kept his expression neutral. "The doctors are optimistic." Rose took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "When this is over, when you can walk again, I don't know how to go back to a life without you in it." The vulnerability in her voice made Elias's heart race. He studied her face, searching for any sign of pity or obligation, finding only genuine emotion. "Rose," he said softly, "please, stand up." Confused, she did as he asked. Elias gripped the arms of his wheelchair, and to her astonishment, slowly rose to his feet, standing unsteadily before her. "How is this possible?" she gasped, instinctively moving forward to support him, though he remained standing on his own. "I've been working with Dr. Lyons in private sessions." His voice was steady despite the effort of standing. "The breakthrough came 3 weeks ago. First a few steps with the parallel bars, then more each day." "How long?" The question encompassed so much more than the simple words. "I've been able to walk for almost 3 weeks," he admitted. "Why didn't you tell me?" Rose whispered, her eyes filling with tears. Elias reached for her hand, his balance still precarious but his grip firm. "Because the moment I can walk, our contract ends. And I couldn't bear the thought of you leaving." The tears spilled over then, trailing down Rose's cheeks. "You incredible fool," she whispered, stepping closer until they were inches apart. "Did you really think I stayed because of a contract?" His free hand came up to brush a tear from her face. "I wasn't sure. How could I be? Our beginning was hardly conventional." "All this time," Rose said softly, "I've been afraid of the same thing. That once you didn't need me anymore, you'd want your freedom back." The revelation hung between them for a heartbeat before Elias closed the distance, his lips finding hers in their first kiss. Tentative at first, then deepening as months of unspoken longing finally found expression. His arms wrapped around her, no longer for support, but in an embrace that felt like coming home. When they finally parted, both breathless, Elias pressed his forehead against hers. "I fell in love with your mind first," he confessed, his voice rough with emotion. "The way you talked about coral ecosystems like secret civilizations. Then your heart, the way you fight for things others consider lost causes. Like a stubborn CEO with a spinal injury," she teased gently, her hands framing his face. Exactly like that. You're a gift to me, Rose. He smiled, the expression transforming his face. I love you too, she responded, the words both foreign and completely natural. You taught me that some damage can heal stronger than before. Together they stood on the cliff edge, silhouetted against the sunset, a man learning to walk again and a woman who had found her way through guilt to love, both forever changed by a storm that had destroyed and created in equal measure. What happens now? Rose asked, as darkness began to fall around them. Elias's answer was simple. Now we begin for real. No contracts, no obligations. Just us, choosing each other every day. The wheelchair sat empty beside them, a reminder of their journey, and all the broken pieces that had somehow, against all odds, formed something whole and unexpected, and beautiful. My beloved family, as we approach the end of Rose and Elias's journey, my heart overflows with how true healing can bloom in the most unexpected places. Their story whispers a beautiful truth to us all, that sometimes our deepest wounds become doorways to our greatest blessings. Weeks later, Elias asked Rose to accompany him on what he called a minor business excursion to inspect one of their coral restoration sites. The early morning drive along the coast revealed nothing unusual until they arrived at the harbor, where Rose stopped in her tracks. There, bobbing gently in the water, was the Coral Guardian, her research vessel now fully restored and gleaming in the morning light. The boat that had once collided with Elias's yacht was transformed, bearing a fresh coat of paint and upgraded equipment visible even from the dock. Surprise, Elias said softly, watching her reaction carefully. Rose turned to him, speechless. The last time she had seen this vessel had been the night of the accident, damaged and impounded as evidence. When did you? I purchased it from the university after they decommissioned it, he explained. The restoration team has been working on it for months. Would you like to see inside? As they boarded, Rose ran her hand along the familiar railings, now rebuilt and refinished. The bridge contained state-of-the-art navigation equipment, and the research lab had been outfitted with technology that rivaled their facilities at Ocean Tech. This is incredible, she whispered, taking it all in. But why? Elias took her. Because this is where our story began. I thought it fitting that this vessel, rebuilt and renewed, should be part of our next chapter too. He led her to the deck as the captain quietly steered them out of the harbor and into open water. The coastline receded, leaving only endless blue surrounding them in every direction. As afternoon gave way to evening, they dined on the deck, reminiscing about the journey that had brought them together. As night fell, a canopy of stars appeared above them, undiminished by city lights. Elias, now walking with just the slightest hint of a limp, guided Rose to the bow of the ship. There's something I want to show you, he said, pointing to a section of the deck that had been subtly modified. Inlaid into the wood was a perfect rendering of the exact coordinates where their vessels had collided almost a year before. Most people would want to forget that spot, Rose observed. I prefer to remember it, Elias replied. Some collisions changed the course of our lives for the better. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. When he opened it, Rose gasped at the ring inside, a band of platinum featuring an inlay of rare blue coral preserved in crystal-clear resin. Rose Crandell, he said, his voice steady as he lowered himself to one knee. Will you marry me again? Not because we have to, but because together we're creating something beautiful. Tears filled her eyes as she nodded. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. Their second wedding took place 3 months later, back on the research vessel, but this time surrounded by ocean and the team of scientists who had witnessed their remarkable journey. No lawyers or cold formalities this time, just genuine celebration under an open sky, with Captain Reynolds officiating the ceremony. During their reception on the deck, with the sun setting in brilliant hues across the water, Elias pulled Rose close for a dance despite his still recovering legs. Are you happy, Mrs. Montgomery? He asked, his eyes reflecting the golden light. Rose smiled, her head resting against his shoulder. More than the ocean has depths, Mr. Montgomery. Good, he replied, kissing her hand, because our work, our life together, is just beginning. As they swayed gently to the music, surrounded by colleagues who had become friends and a vessel that had been transformed from the site of disaster to a place of new beginnings, Rose marveled at life's unexpected turns. Sometimes in life, we face storms that threaten to destroy everything we've built. We crash into circumstances that seem devastating beyond repair. We trust people who betray us, and we blame ourselves for disasters beyond our control. But if Rose and Elias's story teaches us anything, it's that our greatest mistakes can lead to our greatest blessings. That damage can heal stronger at the broken places. That what looks like an ending might actually be the first page of the most beautiful chapter of our lives. To you watching this, if you're in a storm right now, if you're facing betrayal, loss, or circumstances that seem beyond redemption, I pray for your heart to find peace. I pray for your wounds to become wisdom. I pray for unexpected love to find you in the places you least expect it. Remember that the same waves that threaten to drown you can carry you to shores you never imagined. Keep believing, keep healing, keep hoping. Your broken vessel can become a masterpiece if you allow the right hands to restore it. May your journey, like Rose and Elias's, lead you from collision to completion, from arrangement to love, from brokenness to a beauty more profound than you ever dared to dream. Until next time, my heart is with you.